Dude, how far away did you live from Chernobyl? Just out of curiosity, because this was right around the time of your birth, right?
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting thing. My family lived in Dnipro, which is probably about 500 kilometers south of Kiev. And
Mm-hmm.
Chernobyl was about, I think, like 150 kilometers to the like northwest of Kiev. So
Oh,
so yeah, when the whole thing went down, it's like because I was born a month after this thing happened, actually, and
wow.
I was actually trying to trace like the radioactive cloud because like, you can see the simulations of it online now of how how the wind blew and how the particles were disseminated. So yeah, for the first about five or first few days anyway, it blew mostly north. So
Mm.
it was Belarus and like even towards northern Europe, Norway. Like there were people were catching, detecting radiation on their in their power plants there and just freaking out because they didn't know what was happening. And only after a few days did the wind start to shift, and it kind of blew south into Ukraine and sort of regions down below there towards Turkey. Yeah, like I mean, I think it looks like during the explosion, the first few days, it's kind of like the most of the heaviest stuff fell north of
Hmm.
the actual explosion, and then after that, it started to shift towards uh, towards the down.
I see. But when
Yeah,
they were talking about, like, they were talking about what could have been a much worse disaster in episode 2 or 3 about if the thermal explosion had happened, they were worried
mm.
that it was going to sink through and blow up all the water tank. And didn't they say that that was going to affect like a massive radius extending into multiple European countries? So I'm
Yeah,
guessing that that would have affected you, right? If that
yeah.
had happened.
That would have completely devastated everything. But yeah,
Jesus.
it does look like that was obviously like a fear that they needed to consider, but it turned out that that would not have happened because most of the fuel has left the reactor. There was only like 3% of fuel left apparently, so
Hmm.
it wasn't gonna melt all the way down to where the water
Ah.
was.
Oh
But of
wow.
course, they still needed to take those precautions because it was anyone's guess as to what was
Oh
really
yeah.
going on at that point. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's crazy stuff. Is there what do you know, are those two people, those scientists, are they historically, are they real? The main two protagonists, the man and the woman.
Only one. So the lady scientist was created as a composite character representing the rest of the scientific community, basically,
Ah.
because there were a lot of people who were contributing to it, but it didn't really make sense to, like it's hard to put it all in the movie, right, in the show. So she represented this composite character of all the rest of the Soviet nuclear physicist community, and
Yeah.
the reason they chose a woman for that was actually on purpose because like there were quite a few female scientists in Soviet Union, so it wasn't like a male dominated thing, and so they just kind of wanted
Oh yeah.
to include that as
That's what I was curious about, to know whether that was a like, what would you call that? A representation. Uh this is a sort of something that's sort of annoying about like going back doing historical timepieces, but then inserting, making sure there's like a woman character or a character of a certain race so that it meets like 2019's guidelines for
hmm.
diversity and wokeness. But like now I'm immediately distrustful when I see that, and I thought that probably wasn't that was probably two men in reality.
Yeah.
But it turns out I'm wrong in this case.
Well, I mean, so yeah, the character is technically fictional, so it was up to the creators as to how they wanted to cast him or her, but it doesn't seem like unreasonable. I mean, again, like I'm not entirely sure what the breakdown was proportion wise, but it wasn't uncommon to have women scientists, and so I guess
That's good.
that's why they went with that.
That's cool. It's the general sort of a broader comment is like that general approach to redesigning movies to insist that they have the right diversity thing. It's kind of like turned me so cynical that I immediately discounted what in reality was a totally reasonable thing. But because there's so much of that nowadays, I just assume, oh, that's fake. Like I can see where they're inserting people for politically correct reasons.
Yeah, and I mean that's an interesting point as well, because exactly, like even well-intentioned choices become suspect as a result of these trends that just seem to be, like a fashionable thing to do at the moment, and and that's unfortunate.